Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for this information exchange. With me tonight is Yolanda McGlinchey. She's our Emergency Services Manager for the City of Santa Barbara. Eric Bolt is here representing NOAA. Tom Fayram is from the County of Santa Barbara Flood Control District. Jay McAmis is from the County of Santa Barbara Emergency Services. He's the Emergency Services Manager. And Joe Ayala is from the Sheriff's Department, and he'll be talking about our reverse 911 system. Finally is Lindsay Barker, and she will be talking about the Red Cross and the shelters and everything associated with their operation. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to... Oh, I'm sorry. Please hold your questions until the end. There's going to be a lot of information provided to you tonight. Follow-up speakers may answer your questions, so at the end we will have a question and answer period. Thank you. So now I'm going to turn it over to Eric Bolt, and thank you again for joining us.
Okay, good evening. I want to thank the city and the county folks for inviting the National Weather Service out to participate tonight, and I want to be sure and give you the information that will hopefully be useful for you this winter. So I'm going to be talking about several different things. Again, my name is Eric Bolt from the National Weather Service. I did bring some materials in the back and my card and our website information if you need that in the back of the room. Here's some of the things I want to talk about tonight. A little bit, just briefly, where we're located, if you're not familiar with the National Weather Service. We're going to talk about the El Nino predicted for this winter. I'll get out my crystal ball and give you a rough idea of what's going to happen. And then, most importantly, the flash flood and debris flow warning system the National Weather Service has been using for the last few years, and how to get our warnings. And if you are a weather enthusiast, we have information about how you can become a weather spotter, and that helps us out during severe weather. We are located in Oxnard. Our address is right there. We're 24/7 operation. We're always monitoring 4 counties, including Santa Barbara County, and that's what we do 24 hours a day. Our mission and our quest is to protect life and property through our watches and warnings that we issue. And if you would ever like to tour our office, just give me a ring. We'll let you do that. Okay, so now we want to talk about El Ninos. Everybody know we have an El Nino winter coming? You probably heard that. Does everybody think the worst of gloom and doom when you hear El Nino? Yes? Okay, don't. We'll try to use your nerves just a little bit here. This is just a refresher review of what El Nino is. This top image is basically the sea surface temperatures that are warmer than normal in the Pacific Ocean. So the white area is basically where you might see temperatures above normal during an El Nino, versus the bottom picture is the opposite, called La Nina. Last winter we had La Nina conditions and we were drier than normal, continued our drought because of the La Nina. All this is called ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation, if you want to remember that for your trivia quiz. This is an idea of what happens when they're monitoring for El Nino. These rectangular boxes out here in the Pacific Ocean, especially here in the middle, this says Nino 3.4. This is where they have buoys and satellite instruments to measure the sea surface temperatures, among other things. And this chart on the right corresponds to Nino 3.4 in this region. And these other boxes are up here on the right. So the blue areas was last winter's La Nina. We were below normal. So over here on the left is where we were last winter. Over here on the right is where we are today. So you can see the warming. The 0 line right here in the middle is what would be considered normal, and anything above that is getting closer to the El Nino conditions. That's why we're in an El Nino now and heading into that for the winter time. So a visual comparison of El Ninos. This is a satellite image provided by NASA, and this goes back to August, okay? So up here on the upper left is 1997-98 winter. That was a monster El Nino year. Okay, this was the build-up into that winter season in August. And you can see already the much warmer than normal temperatures in the eastern Pacific Ocean. That resulted in a lot of rainfall. Here on the right, upper right, is a moderate El Nino in 2002. You can see the differences, much weaker at the same time frame in August. This is what we have going on this year on the bottom. So already you can see visually that the ramp up to this year's El Nino is much weaker, doesn't compare to the moderate or the strong of past years. These are the rainfall totals that happened in Ventura during those El Nino events. You can see 37 inches, almost 20 inches on this moderate event. The normal for Ventura is around 15 inches every year. Big question mark, what we're going to have here. We have an office pool in our office to decide. I'll let you know what I predicted for that in a second. So that was August. This is September. This is the most recent image we could get our hands on. And if I can go back, you can see down here at the bottom, this is August, and this is September. So rather weak, not a strong signal with this year's El Nino conditions yet. This is a little bit of a complicated chart, but what it is precipitation since that 97, 98 year. The blue is downtown Los Angeles, the red is Ventura, and the green San Luis Obispo, just to give you a rough idea of. This was the big, strong El Nino. You can see how it's kind of dry. We had La Ninas here in the L's, and it might have been a neutral year, then a moderate El Nino like we saw 2002 and 03. And then we had a weak El Nino that gave us almost as much or more than this strong El Nino. Then we had a weak El Nino here, and we had one of the driest just a couple of years ago. Okay? The only El Ninos that we always see heavy rain are the strong ones. When it gets to be a weak to moderate, you could almost flip a coin and come out one way or the other versus wet or dry. But the bottom line is the last 8 of 11 years have been just at or below normal, and that's one of the reasons we're in a drought. Okay? Impacts are global wide, but this is the classic look for the United States. Basically, you've got warming to the north and cooler to the south because you have more storm systems and cloud cover over the southern part of the country, and you get this strong jet stream that comes across the Pacific and sometimes taps into deep moisture in the South Pacific, say south of Hawaii, and brings storm tracks into Southern California. That's the textbook look of El Nino, okay? So some things we can put together about what's happened with El Ninos, which have been measured since 1950, which is not that long of a period, so you have a pretty small database to look at. But moderate El Ninos in general give us about normal precipitation, maybe slightly above. All the strongs have been very wet, above normal precipitation, but both the weak and the strong El Ninos have been more rainfall than moderates, okay? So the official forecast, we have a national center on the East Coast who looks at El Nino, looks at historical information, and gives us a forecast. And this is what they've put out for the whole country, December through February, which is getting right into the bulk of our rainy season. This is temperatures, so they're looking at above normal in the north and cooler in the southeast. And remember that El Nino diagram is pretty much classic El Nino pattern here. And this is precipitation. Now you automatically see green over California. That just means it's an above normal chance that will be wetter than normal. So it's just a probability. I'm actually a little confused why they have it so wet in Northern California, because the classic El Nino pattern is not as wet in Northern California. But the general idea is a little wetter than normal across the southern part of the country. Okay? The main things to remember, any storms. It can be a La Nina year or a El Nino year. Any storm can give us problem, or a series of storms can give us flood problems. So just because we're in an El Nino, don't worry too much about that. Worry about these big storms when they come in. That's when you need to be prepared. Because we're going to go into a moderate El Nino, that's the official prediction for this winter, at least all the models are showing that, we're going to have to hedge toward a normal rainfall year. But anybody who lives in Southern California knows we don't have normal rainfall years. We have extremes. We have 5 storms that cause all kinds of havoc and trouble, and then we have a dry rest of the season, but those 5 storms will turn out to be normal. 17 to, in this area, 18.5 inches and more as you go up in elevation. So keep that in mind. My prediction is less than normal. I'm going about 12 inches for Ventura or downtown Los Angeles, and their normal is about 15 inches. So that's just your inside scoop there. Okay. The flash flood and debris floor warning system. This is something that we've been working with the USGS for the last 5 years. So we're going to talk about that. Again, 5th season. We began in 2005 and 06, and that I think this is a good reason why we started having a drought. As soon as we started using this system, we didn't have much rain. Okay. We are looking at the 1 and 2 year old burn areas. So Jesusita fire is this year's top priority, including the station fire, Morris fire, and other areas. We monitor these closely and issue warnings for flash flood and debris flows when we have heavy rain that meets certain criteria. The USGS gives us these thresholds for rainfall and how much rain it's going to take to start moving material. So we will look at that closely as guidance and help us when we make our decisions for issuing warnings. Okay? This is a video of a debris flow in Devore, California, 2003. This is what it looks like. This was after a very long duration, 15 to 20 hours of rain that ended up with heavy rain toward the last part of the storm. This gentleman walked out the front door with a brand new camera on right after Christmas, didn't have the date on there yet, and he started seeing this and filmed it. Okay? Thank you. This is his neighbor's yard after that debris flow came to a stop. So it's pretty much like flowing concrete. It's got a mixture of water, mud, ash, boulders, twigs. That's why we call them debris flows, not just mud slides or mud flows, but it's full of debris. And this is what happens when it piles up. This is the worst case scenario, long duration, very saturated, intense rainfall on top of that. What we've seen the last 5 years has been nothing like this. We've had smaller events that haven't really caused this type of event, but this is the potential that could happen, and we have to be prepared for it. So the steps in our warning process for flash flood and debris flows, we are going to issue flood advisories, which is what we consider more of a nuisance event, where we're getting minor rocks, minor problems. That's not a threat to life or property. We'll issue a flood advisory when we start to get up to those thresholds the USGS has given us. And then when we start to see exceeding thresholds or other information, we often will call Tom's department and get ideas about what's going on out in the field. Or our weather spotters will give us information. Basically, it's intelligence that helps us make our decisions on issuing warnings. And then we'll issue the warning. The warning activates the EAS, okay, the Emergency Alert System. So one thing to remember tonight about the process of how we issue warnings and how we get to that point. Often when we have a big storm coming, say even the last storm, we had all the winds from the last day or so, we will issue a outlook statement that goes to the radio and television stations, and they'll start to talk about a big storm coming. So the same type of thing will happen this winter. When we have a winter storm coming in, we're expecting heavy rain. We'll issue this out maybe 3 to 4 days in advance. As we get closer, we'll issue a watch. For what you would need to know tonight, it'll be called a flash flood watch. And the lead time with that is at least 6 to 12 hours. And if it's a more definite event, we'll probably have 24-hour notice. And that's the potential of something that's going to happen later on. It's not something that's happening right then. So the watch will get your attention, and it'll be the time to prepare and maybe make some arrangements if you need to leave the area if you're very susceptible to flash flood and debris flows. Okay? The warning will be issued, and the lead time can be very minimal. In fact, it can be as low as 0 minutes. I have to say that because during this project that we've been working with the USGS, the rainfall can hit the burn area, and within 5 minutes you have debris moving, if it's heavy enough and more intense. So the watch is your key to really make some decisions, stay aware of what's going on with the weather forecast, and just keep everything alert at that point. The warning is not the time to get out on the road and evacuate, in my opinion. That would be more life-threatening to be in the middle of it. Okay, so the warning means it's happening, it's imminent, and like I said, short lead times for the most part. An advisory, like I talked about, we'll be issuing this early on. It's for lesser rainfall amounts, kind of nuisance material, but it's definitely happening or imminent also. Okay. So those are basically the definitions we use and the different products. There's a lot of confusion between watch, warning, so hopefully that kind of helped things tonight. Weather radio. This is the official notification from the National Weather Service of a watch or warning. Does anybody have a weather radio? Looks something like this. I saw about 3 or 4% of the audience, and that's about par for the course. Okay, this is a smoke alarm in the Midwest for severe weather. Okay, this will be your first notification. This is what the radio and TV stations are monitoring. They're monitoring our broadcast to receive this alarm through a weather radio, and then they rebroadcast it on their stations. So this gets on there first, and it has a tone alarm. It just sits quietly on your desk or bedside table, and if we issue a warning at 3 in the morning, this will tone and alarm. You can also attach flashing lights to it or a vibrating device if you need that. It's battery backup. About $30 in the electronics store. That's your first notification. Again, it goes to the EAS, but that's not going to wake you up in the middle of the night. All right, I have a broadcast that's originating right here in Santa Barbara, at Broadcast Peak. And again, it activates the emergency alert system. It's an agreement with the broadcasters to immediately play this on the radio and TV. And for more information, you can always go to our website, which I'll give this to you here in a second again. But that's easy to remember. Weather.gov will get you to any National Weather Service site in the country. So if you're traveling and need to go somewhere else to find the weather, you can get on there as well. For our local area, it's /Los Angeles. This is what it looks like on the front page. We have lots of colors when there's weather going on. This in red, for instance, is red flag warnings. And this little polygon that I plotted on here would be your warning box for, say, flash flood. That's what it would look like on our web page. You can click on it, get more information, get the full text product. And then there's the whole list of different products as well. We have a lot of good information if you want to go on there and check it out sometime. And there's our address again. And I've got that on a magnet in the back room if you need that. And finally, Weather Spotter. This is a grassroots effort. You don't have to participate if you don't want to, but you can sign up, and if you have something happen in your backyard or you see it in Carpinteria or some other city, you can call us. We have an 800 number, and you can report severe weather happening in that location. We also have an online reporting capability. We go out to the communities and train people to be weather spotters. Has anybody done that in Santa Barbara? I know we had one not too long ago. Okay. But it really helps us with ground truth. We have lots of good equipment to monitor the situation, but we need your eyes to help us out what's going on officially at your location. And that supports our mission of saving lives and property. So I have information back there if you need that on being a weather spotter. And that's my contact information. I put Jamie Labor's name up there. He's our hydrologist. He kind of helps out from our office for the debris flow project with the USGS, and he handles the river flooding or droughts, depending on which one we're in at the time. And again, there's our website. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Eric. That's very good information to have. Now I'd like to introduce Tom Fayram from the County of Santa Barbara Flood Control District.
Thank you, Kathy. While my PowerPoint's being brought up, I want to plug again the National Weather Service website. It's what we look at all day long in advance of a storm. So you have this access to the same detailed information that we at the county and the city use. In fact, a little side note, we used to contract with a private meteorologist to get regular updates on weather forecasts, and with the internet and the fabulous job the Weather Service has done with their website, we no longer do that. We just stick with the Weather Service website, which has all the latest forecast, rainfall data, satellite radar. You can get it all, so it's really a great tool to use. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Jesusita fire and what the county and the city are doing to prepare, or have done to prepare, and talk a little bit about what you as individuals need to be preparing. But before we go there, I did this at our last meeting, and it shows that little typhoon that we had, about 2 weeks ago, that really brought some rainfall to our local area. And I wrote it down. Eric said 12 inches. Well, we're already at 4, so we got 8 more to go. So we're going to hold you to that. So some pretty amazing rainfall for October, just almost unheard of, but actually, as you'll see in the future, it actually has been heard of. But we had 4 inches here in Santa Barbara, San Marcos Pass, over 10 inches of rain in October. That's just, we've had less than 10 inches of rain in a year. But to have it on one day in October is just astonishing. So here's just some interesting maximum single day in October for Santa Barbara. And of course, we all remember October 20th, 1889. That's the only day that had a higher annual daily forecast or rainfall. So quite extraordinary for Santa Barbara in October. And then San Marcos Pass, it is the highest, although this record only goes back to 1966, and the Santa Barbara record goes back into the 1800s. So we all need to be preparing for this coming winter, and in fact, winter has already come. We feel the cooler air, the winds, the rainfall that we had a couple weeks ago. So what are we doing, and what should you be doing as well? Because really, when you look at mitigating flood losses, it's a partnership. There are things that the county, the city, public agencies can do, and then there's the personal responsibility of homeowners that you should be doing in order to mitigate flood losses. The county brought a plan on July 7th, 2009. Was that 4 months ago now? 3 months ago? To set out a plan of work for this coming winter for the Jesusita fire. 20 miles of stream channel that was cleared. Preparation of, we have 5 existing debris basins below the burned watersheds. We've got a sediment basin out at near the airport in the Atascadero Creek by Goleta Slough. That's actually the only piece of work that isn't done at this point. Installed some debris racks. Aerial hydromulching, we all saw that for the last several weeks. Some of us saw it more than we cared to, but we got through it and got done, and it held up through that big rain. And then one big element of our plan is the winter response, which was now implemented in that last big rain. After that rainfall, we went out and cleared out our debris racks, and we're filling our sandbag stations, and people were in there taking there. So we're really now into this phase of our response plan, having gone all the way back to July, and even before then, we started preparing. We started preparing for this winter in May, after the Jesusita fire just was finally out. Just kind of a graphical representation of what's being done with the stream clearing, individual debris basin clearing out, and debris rack installations. The various projects that we've been doing, cleaning out our debris basins. Stream clearing, we cleared 20 miles of stream by hand with chainsaws. These are our crews. They're hardworking folks that did a great job for us. Put in debris racks to try to stop some of the woody vegetation that we would expect to come down from the burned watershed. And then the rather large project, actually not far from here, right down in Oak Park, clearing out some of the deposited rock and debris that was in that channel. We've seen Mission Creek break out before a couple times at Oak Park. I mentioned the aerial hydromulching. That work was completed here in the early part of October. We were tested not long after it was completed, and it worked out quite well. This is a YouTube video you can go see. It was done by some some younger folks. This wasn't our production, but they went out and did a great job of showing that work that was done up there. A lot of these maps that show where the hydromulching was done and our whole plan is in fact on our website at countyofsb.org. Go to the Public Works Department and then make it to the flood control section, and you should be able to get at all this stuff. So now to the property owner's responsibility. It's really important, as I mentioned, we've been at this now for 5 months, and probably many folks have not even started or thought to start preparing, but you really should. You need to start preparing or thinking about what you're going to do. There's a booklet in the back, and it's also online on our webpage, called The Homeowner's Guide to Flood Prevention and Response. Just updated this summer in color. It has a lot of good information about different techniques you can do to help protect your home and property. And I strongly urge you to grab a copy, or you can get your own copy online at any time as well. If you feel you need sandbags, please do that now. You should have those on hand. You can have them stacked up, ready to deploy at a moment's notice. Don't wait for it to be raining to go out and get your sandbags, because you'll be there with a number of your friends that are all waiting in line. That happened to us on Christmas Eve of 2008, when we had a storm coming in, and suddenly there was a run on sandbags, and so then a lot of our crew had to come out on Christmas Eve to make sure that we had an adequate supply of sandbags for everybody. So please prepare early, and when there's a storm coming in, those sandbags should be at your house, not with your keys in your hand with your pickup truck going out to get them while the rain's starting. Eric mentioned the NOAA radio or the internet. I strongly urge you, the National Weather Service website should be your homepage. It shouldn't be Google or whatever else. It should be the Weather Service, so you can see. A thing you need to really evaluate right now, there is no time to wait. Do you feel that you need flood insurance? Do you want the peace of mind of flood insurance? Were you in or near properties that flooded in the past, say in 1995 or 1998? If so, you have to buy this flood insurance in advance, because there's a 30-day grace period. If you call the Weather Service says there's a 10-inch storm coming Friday, and you call your insurance agent Thursday to get that policy, you're going to be very disappointed, because there's a 30-day grace period to have that in place. So if you think you need flood insurance, you need to act now, because you're now looking at the end of November before that even becomes effective. And then I think Eric touched on it as well. Do you have a plan for evacuation? Do you have a place to stay? Do you have contingency plans for if you are in an area subject to flooding and you want to get out? Do you have friends or family or other accommodations to do that? And then finally, when it does rain, what you can expect from the public agencies. We have been working a long time now, for several months, getting ready for this winter, and we're now ready, with the exception of a couple of minor projects that we're finishing up. When the rain starts, our number one priority is going to be keeping that backbone infrastructure that we have prepared for this winter in as good a shape as we can, clearing the debris racks, clearing the debris basins. If there's a blockage in a stream channel, those are where we're going to be applying our resources. That is where we have to apply our resources. What you need to do is you need to apply your resources to your individual property, so that if the work that we've done becomes overwhelmed, then it's going to come to you and you have to be ready for it. So keep that in mind. In the middle of the storm and water's at your doorstep, there's nothing that we can physically do at that point in time if you wait until that late. So I should have took questions off. We'll take questions at the end, but I think this is the third meeting in this series, and I always close with the question: we've been working for 5 months. We're ready. Are you ready? And if not, you need to start right now.
Thank you, Tom. And now I'd like to bring up Jay McAmis, who's with the Office of Emergency Services with the County of Santa Barbara, and Yolanda McGlinchey, who's the Emergency Services Manager for the City of Santa Barbara.
Good evening. Again, my name is Jay McCamus. I'm an emergency manager with the County of Santa Barbara. I hope Eric and Tom got your attention. That's really what we put them up there in front for, because when we start looking at post-fire periods, which we're looking at right now, if you've lived in the area for more than 4 years, meaning you were here for the storm 2005 and then the previous storms, you know that this area, especially the South Coast area, is prone to flooding. And it's happened traditionally as far back as I can remember, and I can remember back about 35 years, and it pops up all the time. And so when you listen to what they're saying, you know, when you go back home and you look, and I think on the Santa Barbara City website, they've posted maps that show the actual 100-year flood plains and whether or not you might fall in that area. So pay close attention to that. And understand that these fires that occurred out there in the last 18 months are just going to make the situation more critical. They're going to lend itself to faster moving water and more debris, which is why we're here talking to you and trying to get you to understand that it might be a normal rain year, as Eric said, but it's not necessarily a normal reaction to that rain. And so that's something to keep in mind. There's a couple things that have been going on aside from what Tom described as far as the agency efforts to be prepared. Every year we do this. We go through a series of meetings. We get together and we talk about what do we need to do to prepare, what do we need to put in place to pre-stage equipment if that's the case, any training that's involved. On the other side of that, working with our nonprofit partners and even our commercial partners out there, the businesses, to make sure that there are strong links of communication between all of those organizations, that we have the point of contacts we need and we've identified the resources that are out there. And that's really important to understand. A couple of the programs that are out there right now that are working towards those goals has been supported by the Orfalea Foundations. One is the Radio Ready program, which is basically ensuring that we have agreements with local radio stations to be able to disseminate emergency public information and then identify those, making sure they have emergency backup power and communications equipment so we can talk to them via, if we have to, if the power goes out, we can use satellite telephones to do that, and we've put that in place. The other program is the Aware and Prepare program, which is in many communities, and there's right now I think they have one working in Carpinteria, the South Coast, that is kind of a model for a grassroots similar to the community emergency response teams, but to develop the awareness and preparedness of citizens that live in Santa Barbara County as a general rule. And those are both really good programs, Radio Ready and Aware and Prepare. And finally, I would just like to say that our partners in the city, City of Santa Barbara, and our other partners on the South Coast after these fires has just been tremendous. And your coming out here as residents of this area is indicative of the fact that, you know, you understand that this is a partnership when we respond to these kind of emergencies. And when we're looking at preparedness issues, that you are a player on that team. So I appreciate you coming out and listening to what we have to say. Do you have anything?
Good evening. Again, my name is Yolanda McGlinchey. I'm the Emergency Services Manager for the City of Santa Barbara. And as Tom was saying and Eric was saying, we've been doing this type of planning since the Gap Fire, really, for our watersheds and flooding areas for potential rains. And so the City of Santa Barbara is now completing its flood response plan. And that just, what we do is we work with other agencies within the county, and we talk about what needs to get done. We're going to have maps up that are going to show areas of potential traffic control points. We're also working with the Red Cross regarding shelterings in each of the watershed areas. Now, for those of you who've been around for a while, you know that the different areas within the city react differently to the rains and the floods. We have areas where there's going to be some sliding. That may cause some isolation areas, especially up in the foothills. Are you ready? Do you have a disaster kit that could be 3 days to a week if you can't leave your residence? We also have areas where there's swift water, especially within the Sycamore Canyon area. So we want to be able to evacuate that area pretty quickly. And then there's the areas such as the lower west side, lower east side, where the water rises. Again, we may want people to shelter in place. And so we're looking at how we get that information out to the public in a timely fashion so that you know what you need to do as well, but you also need to begin to get ready now. We're planning on having that plan up on our website the beginning of November, next week. We're hoping to have it up. And so you can get on the website and see exactly what we're going to be doing, who we're going to be talking with, and who has responsibility for what. And it's just one way that we can get the information out to you ahead of time. And you have to pardon the voice. I'm just getting over something. And so that's what we wanted to show, that there is a cooperation going on. It's not out there in the public a lot, but we appreciate you coming in and hearing what all of our speakers have to say and getting, again, being a partner with us in preparing for the upcoming rains. Or actually, any disaster. Because if you think about it, if you're prepared for a rain, you're prepared for an earthquake, you're prepared for a fire, and you're prepared for a tsunami, you're prepared for anything that can come our way. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jay and Yolanda. Next is Joe Ayala, and he's going to talk with you about the reverse 911 system.
This isn't my slide. I just want to see the look on your face because I didn't make this. So. Sorry, my name is Joe Ayala. I'm basically the chief pilot of Reverse 911. If some of you have been called by the sessions recently because of the fires, you may recognize my voice. Yeah, I sent out a lot of sessions, and we'll cover that in the slides here in a bit. Who I am, I work at the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department Dispatch Center. I am a dispatcher, dispatch supervisor, and more recently I was promoted to an administrative position where I keep track of notifications as well as deal with computers and other things that support the dispatchers. Again, I work for the county. What is Reverse 911? Reverse 911 is the product name of an emergency notification system. There are other systems out there, but we feel this one is the best one. Why this one? Oh, because we have access to the database. Being a dispatcher, we have access to the 911 database, so when you call your phone, call 911, we will get your information, your address information. So out of all the companies out there, Reverse 911 is the only company that is allowed to have access to it. Legally, we can have it in our center, but we got to do something with it to manage it. And that's why we have Reverse 911 do that for us. We just basically said we want it. What does Reverse 911 do to match the data? It takes the phone account information, compares it up against a map, and try to figure out where these points are that match. It's not a perfect system. Some of you were affected by the evacuations. You may have not gotten a call. And if you haven't, and you're in this room, I'm sorry. We're working on that. I'll get at that in a moment as well. So let's take a look at what Tom's written out. Again, Sergeant Tom Walt is normally the one doing this presentation. He got called to an emergency in Sacramento. Usually to me that means money or something political, but that's not my business to know, right? So he set this up as a presentation that he did for a trade show related to Reverse 911. They're very happy with how much we've been using the system and been running this program. So they asked Tom to come speak for us, speak for them, excuse me. So I'm going to go through his information. His slide is basically combating the Jesusita fire with their system. The demographics, Santa Barbara County, 2,740 square miles. The Sheriff's Department, we serve 400,000 residents. We do not cover the incorporated cities of Santa Maria, Santa Barbara, Lompoc, and Vandenberg. All those folks have their own law enforcement system, and we basically stay out. And the largest concentration of people is along the South Coast and the Santa Maria Valley. And over 700 employees serve Santa Barbara County. which is a lot. Okay, now back to the incident. This started on May 5th. You all know where it started. Okay, and we also had a significant wind event, which really whipped it up into a frenzy, and it made things difficult for everyone involved. It was starting towards dark. We couldn't see where it was going. And on top of that, we had smoke, and that makes it even harder to see where it's going. So it's really hard to get the information. Some folks were asking, well, where's the boundary of the fire? Where's the footprint of the fire? Well, if you ask a firefighter if he'd rather have a GPS and a map in his hand or a hose and a shovel, well, guess which one they're going to go for? They're going to try to beat the flames back. So that's why it's very hard to get information out that early. And the initial objectives were establish command and control, provide a communication system flexible enough to meet the needs of escalating situation. That's where I came in and established a law branch to basically deal with evacuations. And the Emergency Operations Center, the fire agency deals with the battle, the law enforcement deal with evacuations and keeping people safe. And everybody has a role. Red Cross, shelters, I mean, you name it. If there's an agency within the county, they have some type of role in this incident. 4,500 firefighters and 300 plus law enforcement personnel, again related to evacuations and also fighting the flames. Over the first 3 days, there were 30,000 people evacuated. And again, that's an estimate. We could tell you how many phone lines we called, and we could also say how many parcels were affected. So we estimate about 30,000. 32 firefighters were injured, 3 of them got hurt pretty seriously. And 160 structures were destroyed, which is really unfortunate for anybody. Thankfully, because of everyone's efforts, some folks were more aware. Some folks heeded our evacuation warnings and our sessions. Nobody got hurt. 30,000 people in the entire south coast of a county, nobody got hurt. That's great. Let's keep it up. I mean, in the future, it'd be nice if some structures would be saved. That'd be even better. But people matter, and nobody got hurt. That's awesome. So about the reverse 911 system, this looks like a slide from the company as well. So some of them may be oriented towards sales. I do not want to sell you a system. We have it. Okay? You know, we got it. The money's, don't worry about the money. It's on me. Okay? Identify, notify target areas, and you can see there's an example of the map here. We'll show that again later on the slide because I recall seeing it. It also has the ability to alert specific individuals to fill some needs. We have been exploring using it for mobilization for the Red Cross, paging, all these other things that it does. We haven't had time to explore just yet because we've been busy sending notifications for fires. We also have high volume communications. What our reverse 911 system does locally, another reason we like the system is because it's kept in a box at the Sheriff's Department Dispatch Center. It's not hosted by somebody else out of state or whatever. So if our check bounces for whatever reason, we still have our box, you know, as long as we have a way to manage the data, we're good to go. With other solutions, it's hosted out of state. So if the check bounces, they turn you off. Okay, so if you have an emergency, you're out of luck. Sorry. But also the company does offer some off-site solutions. With our local lines, we have 28 phone lines, but the company also offers 2,000. And we'll get back to capacities here with another slide here, but there's some other factors involved with that. It's pretty reliable. We haven't had any major problems with it, and it's supported by a system administrator and emergency planner. The emergency planner is Tom Walton, who's usually here, and the administrator's me, and also our dispatchers. Our dispatchers at the Sheriff's Department are qualified and trained to operate the system. I make sure that they know what they're doing, but I do get woken up at 3 in the morning. It's fine. We do test it weekly. We do get information in and out every week. Our database started with 485,000 phone numbers in our database for all the landline phone numbers in the county, but I also add the cell phone registrations we've been accepting since 2007. We're probably close to about 500,000. And we get weekly updates. And we have a public registration, which also helps. And the company is available 24/7 for us, which we haven't had any problems at all. Okay. April 2005 is when we got it, and we've been using it constantly since then. We've also doing community outreach. We've been doing tests. We've been homeowners associations we've been testing with, Neighborhood Watch, any chance we get to actually really throw the system out there and test it with an organization, with a community, we'll go ahead and do that. Our first test was through Mission Canyon, another one for North County, and during our maiden voyage, we found a problem with our phone lines with the way they got set up. We wouldn't have known unless we tested it. So we tested often to make sure we weed out all these problems. First 911, all that stuff is connected, right? Over the fire, we made 209,000 reverse 911 phone calls. Individual calls counted individually. And our biggest session, our biggest pop was 44,000 on May 7th when we started sending towards the Santa Barbara City. As you all know, that we're here because we've been getting notified. We also have a Mobilization Plus module. Like I said, we're getting on board with the Red Cross to do that, but we're also using it, we're planning on using it to bring people in to tell them why we're calling them. Basically, you leave a message, tell the machine who you want it to call, and send it to work. If it can be used for evacuation notices, it could also be used to bring people in to come to work. So, Bob, I'm sorry, you got to come in. And also, American Red Cross's workers were assembled and setting up shelters throughout the area. We felt we were very successful, and we did have some comments. Someone sent out a customer survey. Some of y'all got that. And from the results were collected, the folks said the positive was the reverse 911 calls were excellent. Neighborhood near Patterson University needed to evacuate, so they got the call. A lot of folks are really happy. Some folks felt that we used it too much. If you folks still feel that we used it too much, tough. Okay, you ask the folks around you that says we didn't use it enough. Okay, talk to those folks and see if they can shed some light. Okay, but we try not to use it for anything that's not an emergency or anything we do not consider emergency. Reverse 911, because it accesses the listed and unlisted phone numbers throughout the county, we have very specific rules and regulations on how we use it. So we cannot use it for take the trash cans off the street every Tuesday. We cannot use it for vote for me. That's not what it's for. So, with emergencies only, because also we don't want you to be nickel and dime to death with all these stupid, silly notifications from Reverse 911 to say, oh, here's another whatever it is, and hang up on us. Meanwhile, there's a boulder coming towards your house. Sorry, you missed a call. So emergencies only. So if you do see the caller ID, Sheriff's Alert, or Reverse 911, please pick it up. It might be worth your while to listen to it. What we're also doing is, because we've been doing this so often, we figured it'd be a good idea to start pre-recording some messages for evacuation warnings and zones and things like that. We're also pre-drawing evacuation zones. If you look in the lobby, you'll see a map with a whole bunch of different nice colors on it. Those basically showing the watersheds. So we do have the data out there saying where there's going to be a flood emergency in the future. I can go ahead of time and draw that area and keep that in the reserve and keep that in our holster for future use. So that way it's less time. So if somebody gets on the ground and say, oh boy, the mountain's coming down, could you notify this watershed? We got it. Tell me what message to send, and we'll send that too. We usually give two types of messages: evacuate, meaning leave now, or shelter in place, hunker down, and see what happens. And trust your sandbags. This is some of the examples. Automated telephone dialing. We're working on getting this in both English and Spanish. It just takes some doing. We have been really reserved lately about doing Spanish because it doubles the size of our notification. It kind of virtually doubles the size of the notification. We record the message in English, usually about 30 seconds, add Spanish to the end of it, another 30 seconds. We're looking at trying to find a better use of it, saying maybe press 1 to hear this message in Spanish. But also depends on the neighborhood. We also have different dialects. It's not just Spanish in the county, it's also Filipino. And a whole bunch of, there's a lot of cultural diversity in the county, which is a great thing. But we're in a hurry. We have to find somebody that speaks the language, actually knows how to use the system and get that out there. In the advisory phase, you already covered this with the other slides, with our other presenters. Basically, monitor your local and government channels for additional information. Warning, we're issuing a flood warning in your area. Take precautions. Please monitor your local and government channels for additional information. Critical phase, and that's when Eric says, leave now. Okay, and when Eric and Tom say leave now, we're going to say evacuate, get out. A lot of folks like to gauge their own risk to whatever disaster. If it's raining, you're not going to be able to predict when the flash flood's coming. All you're going to get is, what's that sound? It sounds like a train. It's too late. So pay attention to your media. Okay, this is one of the maps that we use in our system. This is actually a snapshot of what we use for the fire. Excuse me real quick. Okay, this is actually a snapshot of our system that I provided for briefing. What it's showing us is the Sycamore Canyon area, and the area above it, that's Gibraltar Road, and that's what we sent. I plotted this, and it came up with 1,543 points. It doesn't mean that there's 1,543 people out there. It just means there's 1,543 phone numbers. And there's different tools that I could use to get that. What we use that for is basically population loading to try to figure out where everybody's at. If I go out there and see where that cherry is, there may not be a house. It's just the computer's estimation of it. Let's see, I had some map notes here. And it doesn't really show, and of course it doesn't show the people that it doesn't know are out there. We get misspellings on the map, so the database may fall out, or the telephone company gives us bad information, so the phone number would fall out, and those are the reasons why you wouldn't get called. And when we do send the notification in this session, with 1,543, with using our local phone lines, our 28 local phone lines, it's not going to go in one big blast. It's going to take about an hour to call all those people. So if you get the call 15 minutes after somebody's been to your door knocking saying get out, that's normal. Or if you get it before somebody gets to your house, that's normal. We take the calls, we take the map, we draw the zone, we tell it, okay, call these people. Then it looks at the database, say who lives here, and then it throws it out to the phone lines, and it's like 28 little elves making all the phone calls. With our vendor, again, they offer 2,000 phone lines, but what we found out during one of our tests, and again, it's a good reason we have our tests, is that our local phone switches don't have that kind of capacity. So sure, the vendors and everyone else can advertise they have 2,000 phone lines to help you out in an emergency, but your telephone switch is only allowing 175 phone numbers. That has to be taken into consideration. You ram all that water through the pipe, it's going to shut off. And the same thing could happen with our phone lines. So during a big emergency, we do use the vendors' phone lines as well because they'd have a bigger capacity than we do. But we tell them, please give it to our switches in smaller batches because we want to be guaranteed that these folks go through. Does everybody have a home phone line that when the plug's into the wall, a corded? If you don't have a corded phone line, go ahead and get one. They're cheap. You can get a Radio Shack, CVS, or what have you, and go ahead and get it and keep it in your house somewhere. Because the phone company spent a lot of money making sure that if your phone rings or if your phone number gets called, you'll get the signal. And cell phones, not so much. Cordless phones, if the handset's powered, that's fine, it's on battery, but if the base isn't powered, the handset's not going to get the call. Again, the phone company spends a lot of money to make sure that they'll at least get it if the lines are intact. I've seen Verizon trucks all the time. I haven't seen a Sprint Wireless. So we keep the system because of the landlines. There's a better guarantee for that. There's no guarantee if we do cell phones just yet, but we are taking those registrations, and hopefully it's better than we want to get to you somehow. This one's back to the Sycamore Creek area. This is just south of the previous one. This is this area here. 115 houses. Again, if we actually go to each tomato there and look left and right, we may not actually see a house, just an estimate of what there is. And what it's also showing is how our system geocodes it. It basically plots everything along that center line. If somebody has their mailbox there, they'll get called, but the house may actually be somewhere else up the hill on each side. And we're also working on a new registration portal, which help alleviate that, and I'll talk about that in a moment. This is for Santa Barbara City, 2,922 points, phone numbers. And these numbers that you see down here keep getting bigger because of the cell phone registrations we're taking at sbsheriff.org. Follow the links to reverse 911 registration. Okay, while I have it on there, What we've done in the past is during our notifications, since we've had the system, in 2007 during the Zaka fire, we were drawing our geozones. That's what we call this process here. And one of our areas, we noticed the count was a lot lower than what we expected. This caused some concern for us. So we figured for this particular area, maybe these folks have cell phones, it's up in the hills, it's out of, very rural. It could be vacation homes or what have you, so we opened up the cell phone registration. Again, sbsheriff.org, follow the links to reverse timeline registration. What that does is you fill out the form, it comes to us in the form of an email, and the dispatchers, because they know the 911 database, they enter it by hand. And it takes a while to do that. In 2008, we did a drill in Montecito, which is near, well, a little bit of overlap with that area, but the other area we cover is more in this section here. And we put out the survey, and we found out that, well, there's a lot of people out there that aren't getting called. What can we do about this? So we went to a company and said, okay, we got these phone numbers here, and these folks are saying they aren't being called. We got this map here. What can you do for us? So they did some geocoding for us and what we call helping this process. And they made a great improvement. More folks in Montecito got called. And another good example is Rancho del Cielo housing tract. They got 2 calls during the Gap fire. When we tested later after this company was done, we got 309. Big improvements. We're still working on it. In 2009, this year, because of all these fires, okay, we had improved geocoding, but we still have people falling off the map. So this still isn't good enough. We've banged on the company's doors, reverse 911's doors, and say, what can you do for us? We need a portal, something people can use to tell us where they really are, because that's the biggest thing with people resubmitting their phone numbers because they didn't get called during the last disaster. I don't have an example here, but with the new self-registration portal, it'll be online by December sometime. We'll get the address on the other homepage as well. It allows you to register your home number, validate it with an email, and also basically drag a tag on the map to show us exactly where your house is. So, in like this example, if your house is really up on top of the hill or around this way or that way, it's more exact. And this makes a big difference when we're trying to plan all this. That's about it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And now we'll hear from Lindsay Barker, who's with the Santa Barbara County Red Cross.
Okay, so we talked a lot. First of all, thank you for coming out to the Red Cross. I'm a Red Cross volunteer, and we appreciate you coming to our offices tonight. So we talked a lot about how the government has prepared, or government agencies have been preparing for this year's flood season, but now it's time for you all to prepare. So we're going to go through some few quick steps on how you can get ready for this year's flood season. So, first thing is to make a plan. Talk to your family members about what you would do in any type of disaster, not just flood season, and make a contact list. A lot of time, local lines, phone lines can be down in disasters, so it's great to have an out-of-state contact so that all family members know to call in to Grandma Carter. It's my grandmother. Call in to Grandma Carter, and then she'll call everybody else to make sure people are okay. Have a meeting place. In a small family fire, this could be across the street at a neighbor's house, but in a bigger disaster, it's good to have a place everyone knows about, so everyone can go and meet up at that place. Family communication plan, and have an evacuation plan, including what are you going to do with your pets and those people that have special needs in your family. Also thinking about checking the city's traffic points and where you would need to go, what route you would need to take if an area is near a creek, things like that. Building a disaster supply kit is your next step. Now, just out of curiosity, how many of you have a disaster kit already built? Great. You guys are all California residents, and we have lots of disasters, so I'm glad to see that. So it's a collection of necessary items that you would want in case of a disaster. So here's an example. We have one in the back. We have a portable one here that would be helpful in a car. But really, you want it to be portable, waterproof. Things like buckets are great disaster kits. And you want to check your contents twice a year and update it as necessary. Replace water or old food, the canned food that goes bad. And it's good to check it when you are replacing your batteries and your fire detectors. That's a good reminder of when to replace the disaster kit items. Also consider having an emergency kit in your car. We're all Californians who drive on the freeway a lot, and if the 101, has an issue for any reason, you might be spending hours in your car. So having food and water on your person or in your car is a good idea. So what to include in a disaster kit? Red Cross recommends you have supplies for at least 5 days. We recommend non-perishable food, supply of water, flashlight and batteries, extra batteries and making sure they work, very helpful tip. A first aid kit, extra clothing and blankets, also very sturdy shoes. Flip-flops, probably not a good idea in a disaster. You don't want to cut your feet. Photo ID and cash, special needs items, medications, eyeglasses, extra set of contacts, things like that, and important documents and insurance information. This is especially important if anything goes wrong or you have water damage in your home. You don't want to be without those important documents. So I thought I'd share mine. It's a good idea to put the things that you want to keep waterproof in handy plastic bags. This is my personal one I made when I lived in LA. So what do I have in here? My eyeglasses prescription, bank documents, and my passport, just in case. You never know. And it's all in one place. I don't have to look for it. I'm not going and grabbing files in different places. So there you go. So worst case scenario, if you are evacuated, what should you do? Well, the Red Cross will open shelters as needed. We will get up in the middle of the night and go to the determined location by the Sheriff's Department and open a shelter as needed. Services are free of charge and everyone is welcome. The locations will be publicized through radio, TV, and online, so make sure you have your battery-powered radio. And shelters are generally at schools, faith-based organizations, and large facilities located outside of the disaster area but close to the evacuation zone. So again, this is why we are working with city, so that we don't place a shelter in a flood zone. So what can you expect? Beautiful cots and blankets. We suggest you bring your own pillow. Food, snacks, regular disaster updates from fire, police, and sheriff's departments. We keep in contact with them, obviously. And shelters will not be closed until all needs have been met. So we make sure you have a place to go before we close the shelter. However, if sleeping on a cot does not look like a good idea for you, you should plan ahead of time of a friend or family member where you can go and stay with them for a week if needed. So thinking in advance before you get into this situation. But we will have shelters open. So what about special needs? Red Cross shelters do have mental health and health services. If you have medications, we strongly suggest that you have your own supply in your emergency kit. A 30-day supply in any type of disaster is a good idea. And you can call your insurance agencies and try to work that out. We are not equipped as Red Cross staff to provide full-time medical care. So those with special needs, if you have a caregiver or something to set up a agreement with them that they could provide assistance or a family member could provide assistance. If you have small children, make sure to include baby food, blankets, and diapers in your kit. Always important. So what about pets? Our shelters do not allow pets inside. Lots of people have allergies, so we do work with Humane Society and other organizations to have a place for your pet, either outside of the shelter or at another location, and those will be publicized as well. But in your disaster kit, you want to think about what your pet needs. Does it have a crate so you don't have to put your cat in an empty box or something like that? Do you have food or pet medications for, a long haul? A really great resource that Red Cross offers that a lot of people don't know about is our welfare inquiry, which is you log on to www.safeandwell.org, and you can register yourself where, according to the disaster, put your information on where your home is and what you're doing at that time. So if you were in a shelter, you can click, I'm okay, I'm in a shelter, or I'm staying with a friend. It has all these different options. And then people can either search for you, or they can contact Red Cross and tell us, I'm so-and-so's mother, are they okay? And we'll get in touch with you so that you guys can get in contact with each other. So it's a great resource, and whether you end up in a shelter or not, it's good to register. So that was the short and sweet version of this. And even though we work with our partner agencies, partner government agencies, we are not a government organization. We're a nonprofit, and we are funded 100% by donations. And we are run by 96% by volunteers like myself. And we do administration, disaster services, public support, safety and preparedness, and youth services. We also offer a whole slew of things, including disaster supply kits, and there are price sheets back there. If you don't want to build your own disaster kit, we can hook you up with one. So if you have need any other information, or we're always looking for volunteers, please contact the chapter. Great, thanks.
All right, well, thank you, Lindsay. You've all heard a great deal of information tonight, and right now I'd like to open up the floor for questions. Does anybody have any questions for our panelists? Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that we've been told we need to worry about are the debris flows as a result of the fires. And I know we've done hydromulching, and I'm wondering when that will kick in and start to ameliorate the risk of the debris flow.
Tom, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Well, the debris flow phenomenon is really if we were to go back and put Eric's slide back up, you generally get a debris flow closer to the actual mountains. So I don't know where all you folks live. If you live up by Rocky Nook Park or up above that would be more of the area you would see that. We won't see a debris flow like that at Stearns Wharf. There's just not the energy for that to carry on down. So in fact, if you go look at Rocky Nook Park and you look at all the rocks in Rocky, hence its name, UCSB has determined that was a debris flow that formed Rocky Nook Park. But that's right what we call kind of the apex of where the hills meet the coastal plain. And so generally the closer to the mountains you are with a steeper slope, those debris flows do need a gradient to keep them going. Further down, it's going to be sediment and water and then the floating debris that are going to be the problem, as opposed to rocks the size of Volkswagens down on Lower State Street. That's not really likely.
Where do we get our sand back?
Oh, good question. Very good question. There is a link on the county's website, but let me go over the locations where they are, if I can remember them. If you live up in the Mission Canyon area, there is a sandbag and also a mulch pile from our Resource Recovery Division, which is just ground up green waste. At the end of Tunnel Road, there, at the very end, there's a big city water tank up there. In the Botanic Garden parking lot, and then also at the county corporate yard where the transfer station is out on Kyriel. There's a station there. And then also down at the city annex yard on Yananali. I don't know the exact address.
401 East.
401 East Yananali. And then there's also a station out in Goleta held over from the Gap Fire at Fire Station 14 on North Los Caneros Road, if you know where that county fire station is. Did I miss any of them, or is that all of them? Okay, I think that's all of them. Oh, yeah. The fire station, the Montecito Fire Station number 1, which I believe is on San Ysidro Road, has them. The station number 2, which is, I believe, on Cold Springs Road, they declined to carry them this year. So in Sycamore Canyon, your next best bet would be either go up to the Botanic Garden or go down to the Yananali Yard or go over to the Montecito Fire Station on San Ysidro.
I have a question on these flood risk maps, relatively new to Santa Barbara, and are these areas the typical flood warning zones, or is it greater because of the fire, or because of the El Nino, or I mean, are these just the typical flood areas every year?
Are those the 100-year flood zone map? Okay, so those areas are identified as the FEMA 100-year flood zone maps. Those are the areas that we would identify as having the highest risk. However, it's important to note that through the city and urban areas, we have bridges and we have other potential blockages that then could cause the creek to flow out and go in areas where it's not shown on that map. So it's a good guideline. I would say if you're in there or near there, I would be concerned, definitely. But it's certainly nothing's perfect to say, here's where, the risk area is, and that's it.
Any other questions? Okay.
I live just below Willow Glen Park, and I'm noticing on the map, and I've also noticed before this, that the Arroyo Burro Creek meets the Schulte Creek coming down, and the two join right above Willow Glen Park. And so living below that, naturally it makes you a little nervous if there's any chance of blockages of those two creeks, say up where they meet and flow together.
I think the entire stream corridor would be a concern of blockages. Now I think if I understand where you are, I think you're on San Roque Creek. I'm not intimately familiar with that road. I'm sorry. Arroyo Burro Creek actually starts at the confluence of okay, but at those confluence areas, they can be a problem where two creeks come together, especially those areas where fairly highly burned percentages. Barger Canyon and San Roque Creek both had high areas of burn intensities. They were mulched pretty hard as well. Those watersheds actually did get a fair amount of hydromulching on them. The only thing I can say is if anybody observes a large tree down or an obstruction in the stream corridor, to call our office, and we will take action. Our office phone number is 568-3440. If it's in the middle of the night, chances are our office will be open, but if there's no answer, then if it truly is an emergency, then you dial 911. and then we will we're on a call-out chain from Sheriff's Dispatch, and we can have people there. So the phone number, 568-3440. Is it on our booklet? Yes, it is. It's on the back of our booklet. The booklets are gone? Okay. Oh, very good. I thought I brought at least 100, I thought. This document can be downloaded at www.countyofsb.org / whatever. The one goes from upper right to lower left. PWD. So countyofsb.org / PWD. And then you'll see a link for Homeowner's Guide to Flood Prevention and Response. So that'll be bookmarked right below the National Weather Service website.
Wait, we have one back here, and then I'll get to it.
I have a question. You know, the Arroyo Puro Creek and the San Roque Creek. Now, the one that goes between from San Remo goes down, crosses state, and apparently goes down towards Hope.
By the YMCA.
Yeah. Now, the section between San Remo and State, there's a lot of vegetation in that creek. Big trees, huge vegetation. Now, is that going to be an obstacle? But they're live trees, they're not dead, but there are so many, they're thick.
If you look at what we strive to get in terms of the stream corridor is, and I believe, I haven't walked every step of creek, but our crews have, you will not see any of those large trees in the bottom of the creek. They may be on the bank, but they are not on the bottom. The bottom should now be clear and open. We want the trees on the bank. That's a tremendous erosion protection facility. I know there and been in past meetings where people have suggested, why don't we clear cut the creek channels, aside from the fact that just wouldn't be possible. We couldn't get the permits to do that, and that would be the last thing we would want to do in terms of erosion control. So we want a vegetated creek channel, we want trees on the banks, we want the bottom open, and that's what I believe we have on all the stream corridors, all 20 miles of them downstream of the Jesusita fire.
In the history of flood, has the water ever come close to State Street and beyond?
Well, okay, now you're testing. In 1995 would be our test case, and did we have a breakout right here on State Street? And I don't know if we had a major breakout there. The major breakout on Mission Creek was actually just downstream of De La Vina, and that's where it took off for Cottage Hospital and went all through that area. And then, of course, down below, just above the freeway and the railroad plaza, and all of lower State Street had a particularly bad day in 1995.
Tom, I'm Vernon Michi, and I have a million questions for you.
There's 4 other people up here.
I've talked to you before, and first thing I want to thank you is for the cleaning the creek right across the street between all of the bridges. You've got a hard-working bunch of guys.
I agree with you there.
And they worth every nickel. Now, do you have enough money to do the job that you tax for?
I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to tell you, yes, we do. If you go home and pull out your tax bill, which we all got our fresh one, right, here just recently, due December 10th, you'll see a line item on there that says South Coast Flood Zone. And there'll be a dollar amount there, and that's the money that comes in to the district that funds all of this emergency work. Now, I'm also happy to say that a lot of this emergency work that we've been talking about, a big portion of that has been funded by the federal government, an agency called the Natural Resources Conservation Service. They are a friend to our county. They have been there when we've needed them. They're funding 75% of the cost of this, which means as we enter into the winter, we have the resources then to take on all the cleaning that will happen. We saw after the Gap Fire, even though last year was a relatively light year, after every rainstorm, there were trees down somewhere. Our debris racks were always full, and so our crews were out cleaning all those up, sometimes with cranes that cost $300 an hour. So I don't foresee funding problems going into this winter. And if we really get a heavy year like 1995, then what we really hope we get is the FEMA reimbursement if we're declared a disaster area. But I think we're in good shape there.
What type of cooperation are you getting from the city of Santa Barbara?
Well, the city of Santa Barbara, as I showed on the map, but not very clear, they have a bunch of projects. I think you're working on one right out here right now, the Alomar Street Bridge, which has been a problem for them. They're working on that. I believe your debris rack in Barger Canyon has been completed. I know it was just about completed before that big rainstorm, and then it suffered some damage, but I think they fixed it. And then, and maybe I should let Kathy answer this. I know you're also doing the clean out on State Street, the culvert on San Roque Creek, and then of course these meetings as well. We're showing that we're working together. All of the items that we have fit together to work together. The city of Santa Barbara contributed $50,000 to the Hydromulch project as well. So
The reason for my question is you cleaned underneath the bridge, or you busted all of the rocks underneath the Alomar Bridge. You had a ramp that was built. Your crew was willing to haul them rocks away for the city if they would just break them up. And they neglected to even, I believe, give you guys an okay on that. So that means that they had to come out and start all over again. And this bulldozer's been parked down there for a week and a half, no movement.
Well, I'll let Kathy answer the scheduling to that, but the reason why we didn't go in and take out that rock, grouted rock fillet underneath the Alomar Bridge is that we weren't going to go in there and expose that abutment not knowing when the work was going to be done, because then we could have exposed the bridge to a danger, so we preferred that the city address the entire project. Maybe you can talk about the schedule of completion of that.
Yes, I can't speak to the exact end date of the project. I do know that they are going to use some of the rocks that were taken out of the bottom of the creek to reinforce the abutments to the bridge so that we don't have any washouts, or we try to prevent washouts to the maximum extent feasible. The project should be complete, I would imagine, in the next couple of weeks. We've had the rain slowed us down a little bit. We have permit conditions that we have to comply with that don't allow us to work in flowing water, and we had to deal with the flowing water after the rain. So that was our main setback during that project. But you have our word, and we're under deadline to get that done as quick as we can.
I've been after this bridge for probably the last 7 or 8 years, and I had to get the city engineer with part of the city council to be aware that they had undermining of that bridge. And I've had lots of the city people that came out to take a look at that, and it just dropped dead. No movement until now.
Perhaps I can give you the name and phone number for our city engineer, and you can give him a call?
I've got them all.
Do you have Pat Kelly's number?
I've got Pat Kelly. He was the guy I brought down the creek and showed him what was going on.
Okay, let me get your name after the meeting, and I'll talk with Pat tomorrow for you.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions?
Phoned in regarding netting for people who still have homes that are underneath the burn area, and they're concerned about debris and sliding issues up above their home. If netting would help in that, I know that there's been some netting done in Sycamore Canyon. And so,
You mean like jute netting?
yeah.
Jute netting? I think, well, certainly anything from just seeding and lightly irrigating would be a first possible approach. We have the mulch available from our resource recovery group. You could spread as well to help foster regrowth. In the end, what we're after is regrowth. And so if you want to go to the extent, especially if it's a very steep slope, and you properly install an anchor jute netting, that would certainly be a good idea in combination perhaps with seed to get vegetation growing on there. Certainly and there's erosion control recommendations in this booklet as well.
I have a couple of questions regarding the reverse 911.
Thank you.
Give you all a break over there. How successful are you about getting the word out about how to register for the reverse 911 for cell phones?
We
Again, like I said, we unveiled it in 2007, and we quietly kept it open and available for folks and passed it out at community meetings. During the Gap fire, I believe our sheriff let the cat out of the bag and said, register. Here's the website. Now for the new one, the new portal, we're going to make announcements wherever we can, basically. So keep your eyes open for that. It's something that the machine has always had the ability to do, but we were really apprehensive at first because we're afraid of the amount of work involved. Because these numbers take so long to put in by hand. During the Gap fire, we had about 20,000 registrations requests, and for something that we have to do in by hand, it took us a long time to get those in the system, well after the incident was over. That's what we want for the new system, for folks to be in basically within the hour of the time that they register. It's going to be, we want it to be better, and we're getting there.
Will it be a system where they can simply go to a website and kind of register, fill in their information, and it'll be in your computer?
Yes. It won't be immediate because our concerns over, one of the major concerns over having the reverse 911 and access to this database, we need to keep security precautions around it. So people can't jack straight into our reverse 911. There's other folks that will want to do us harm. So we have to keep a partition or firewall between them all. You go to the website, you register, then our machine, when it's ready, it'll reach out and grab that information and withdraw it back into its shell. And we've got a plan to do that about whatever we set it to, every hour, every 4 hours or so. But that's with the new one. Right now, we still have the former system still in place where we actually get it printed out in an email and enter it by hand.
Okay, thank you. Another question I had is, I know that the harbor, Santa Barbara Harbor, did a reverse 911 test recently.
Yes.
How successful was that with the harbor situation?
We considered a pretty great success. With any sessions, we're hitting about 20 to 30% success rate, but that's counting the successful when people pick up the phone and talk and listen to our message, and answering the phone or the answer machine, which adds about another 10%. So 20 to 30 to 40%. With the harbor, we got much, much higher than that because they're expecting our call. I had a meeting with them this week, and they're all very happy with it. And we're also going to try to just basically sharpen the edge of the knife, as it were.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I was wondering, after what you just said, I live at the end of Sycamore Creek, right at Cabrillo, in that area. And after the tea house fire, I got a reverse 911. Now, am I still on the list then?
Yes. Once you're in the, I should put the disclaimer here. We have the basic database that the phone company provides us and gives us updates with. But we also have what folks have wanted to put in our system, and we consider that adding to. When we perform the upgrade, keep coming back and re-register information just in case to make sure that we have it right. We're also going to get a newer, better, stronger, an uglier version of our current system, which will make things a lot better as it adds more capacity. Some of the information that we've had requests for in the past from cell phones may not carry over, but we'll also say, be sure you're registered. We're having this new portal come in first, and once you register with the new portal, you're going to be safe. But if you registered in the past, once we flip the switch to the new anything, you haven't registered, then you're going to be fine. If you haven't lifted a finger but you still gotten a call during all these disasters we have in the past, you're going to be fine because that means we got your information from the phone company, and that's the base of our information we already have.
Okay, well, again, thank you all for coming to this evening, and I have a request for all of you. If you would, please take a moment and maybe talk with your neighbors, talk with your family members, and spread the word about flood preparedness, because you're out there and we can't reach everybody. We don't have the means nor the staff to do it, but you can be our ambassadors to go out and educate those that you love, those that are near and dear to you, so that you'll be prepared if anything does happen this winter. You might tell them that we have additional meetings like this planned. The next one is on Thursday, November 12th. That's over on the east side of town at the Franklin Neighborhood Center. Also on Thursday, November 19th at the Franklin School Auditorium on the east side. And at that one, we will also have Spanish translation available. And then our final one will be on Thursday, December 10th, in the Faulkner Gallery in the Main Branch Library downtown. So you're all welcome to attend again if you'd like. Please spread the word to those that you know that we have these ongoing flood preparedness meetings for their benefit. And again, thank you very much for joining us tonight.